If this story interested you, don't forget to subscribe to our channel and tell us what city you're watching from. Continuing. Winter in Aspen, Colorado, in the heart of the Rocky Mountains, brought with it a biting cold rarely seen in other regions of the United States. On that July morning, the temperature had dropped to a bracing 37 degrees Fahrenheit, 3 degrees Celsius, and a dense fog covered the streets of the tourist town. Ms. Rebecca Davies, a teacher, drove through the Aspen Heights neighborhood in her compact car, heading to the municipal school where she had worked as an educational coordinator for almost 6 years. The vehicle's heater struggled to keep the interior pleasant while she adjusted her wool scarf around her neck. Her thoughts were on one of her students, Bianca Miller, a girl of only 7 years old who had been exhibiting increasingly concerning behavior in recent weeks. Always so communicative and cheerful, she now barely spoke during classes, didn't play at recess, and her drawings, once colorful, had become dark and disturbing. The coordinator decided to do something she rarely did: visit the student's home before school hours. She needed to understand what was happening with Bianca, and if her intuition was correct, she couldn't wait another day. As she turned onto the street leading to Pine Ridge Estates, an upscale area of the city, Rebecca felt the contrast between the tourist center and the imposing mansions that rose among the native pine trees. The Miller family residence was not hard to find, a modern 3-story building with large glass windows and an impeccably maintained garden. Bianca's father, Edward Miller, was a hotel industry entrepreneur, often absent due to professional commitments in New York City and other major capitals. The girl lived primarily with her stepmother, Christine, a socialite known for organizing charity events in the city. Rebecca parked her car near the gate, still hesitant about how she would be received. It was at that moment that she saw something that made her heart clench. Bianca, wearing only a thin dress inadequate for the intense cold, was sweeping the extensive sidewalk of the mansion. Barefoot, with her small toes red, the girl trembled visibly as she tried to handle a broom almost her size. The coordinator quickly got out of her car, adjusting her coat. "Bianca? What are you doing out here in this cold, sweetie?" The girl looked up, surprised and frightened at the same time. Her eyes, once contagiously bright, now seemed dull, surrounded by dark circles that betrayed restless nights. She glanced quickly at the house windows, as if fearing being watched. "Miss Rebecca," she whispered, barely able to hide the tremor in her voice. I need to finish cleaning before she wakes up. If I don't finish, I won't get breakfast again." Rebecca felt a chill that had nothing to do with the weather. She immediately took off her scarf and wrapped it around the girl's shoulders, crouching down to meet her gaze. "How many times has this happened, Bianca? Why are you barefoot in this cold?" The girl looked away, wiggling her small toes against the cold ground. "My shoes are in time out," she murmured almost inaudibly. "Christine said I dirtied the new carpet, and that I can only wear shoes when I learn to clean my feet properly." Before Rebecca could react, the mansion's main door opened. Christine Vance Miller emerged impeccably dressed in a silk robe, her hair perfectly styled despite the early hour. Her socialite smile transformed into an expression of surprise upon seeing the coordinator. "Ms. Davies, I wasn't expecting visitors so early," she said with a studied cordiality, descending the entrance steps. "Bianca, what are you still doing with the broom? I thought you had finished that simple task." Her tone was soft, but there was an intimidating firmness between the lines. "Good morning." "Mrs. Miller, I was passing by on my way to school and saw Bianca out here," Rebecca explained, maintaining her calm despite her rising indignation. "I was concerned to see her working barefoot in this cold. The temperature is very low today." Christine chuckled lightly, as if the teacher's concern was an adorable exaggeration. "Oh, this girl, always leaving tasks until the last minute. I'm just teaching responsibility, you know. At her age, I was already helping my mother with all the household chores." She turned to Bianca with a smile that didn't reach her eyes. "Darling, go get ready for school now. We'll talk about your obligations later." The girl dropped the broom as if the handle burned her hands and ran inside, not without first casting a grateful look at her teacher. When they were alone, Christine crossed her arms, her body language subtly changing. "Teacher, I know your concern is admirable, but I must emphasize that home education methods are family matters. Bianca needs to learn values, and in this house, We value hard work and discipline. Mrs. Miller, with all due respect, there are appropriate ways to teach responsibility to a 7-year-old child, and making her sweep the sidewalk barefoot in the middle of Aspen's winter is not one of them, Rebecca responded firmly, struggling to maintain a professional tone. Oh, teacher, don't exaggerate. The girl was perfectly fine, just dramatizing as she always does. Edward spoiled her too much before we married, and I'm just trying to correct years of excessive indulgence. Christine's smile returned, calculated and cold. Perhaps we should also discuss her behavior at school. She has mentioned some things about, well, teaching methods that seem questionable to me. The veiled threat did not go unnoticed. Rebecca understood she was facing someone skilled in manipulation and role reversal. She decided to strategically retreat. I'm only concerned with the well-being of all my students. If you need guidance on how to help Bianca with her school development, I am available. Rebecca looked at her watch. I need to go now, classes are approaching. I would like to emphasize that Bianca is an extraordinarily intelligent and sensitive child. She deserves all our care. Christine maintained her artificial smile as she accompanied Rebecca to the gate. Of course. And I appreciate your dedication, teacher. Just don't forget that there are professional boundaries that must be respected. As she got into her car, Rebecca felt a mixture of anger and helplessness. What she had witnessed went far beyond strict educational methods. It was clearly a case of neglect, possibly even worse. In the rearview mirror, she saw Christine still standing by the gate, watching her with calculating eyes. On the passenger seat, Rebecca placed her bag and noticed the folder with Bianca's recent drawings that she had set aside to analyze. Starting the vehicle, she made a decision. She would not stand idly by. That girl needed help, and she would use every resource available to protect her. What Rebecca didn't know yet was that she had just initiated a battle against a powerful and unscrupulous adversary, and that her own career and reputation would soon be at risk. Maplewood Elementary School was just 15 minutes from the Miller mansion, but it seemed to belong to a completely different universe. The simple 2-story building, painted in a faded yellow, welcomed children from diverse socio-economic realities of Aspen, being one of the few truly democratic spaces in the tourist town. Rebecca arrived at school with a heavy heart and a mind buzzing. She went directly to Principal Cecilia Hayes' office, an experienced 58-year-old educator who ran the institution with a perfect balance of discipline and affection. "Cecilia, we need to talk urgently," Rebecca said, closing the door behind her. For the next 20 minutes, she reported in detail what she had witnessed at Bianca's house, as well as the behavioral changes the girl had been exhibiting. The principal listened attentively, her expression growing more serious with each shared detail. "This is very serious." "Rebecca," Cecilia affirmed, adjusting her red-framed glasses, "I myself noticed the changes in Bianca in recent months. Remember how participative she was in school presentations? Now she hides in corners during events." The principal opened a drawer and took out a folder. "So in fact, I was going to call you today to talk about this." Inside the folder were reports from other teachers, all highlighting changes in the girl's behavior. Isolation during recess, inattention in class, frequent drowsiness, and even an episode where Bianca had a panic attack when a staff member accidentally knocked over a pile of books in the library. "We need to document all of this and contact Child Protective Services, CPS," Cecilia declared. "But we will need more concrete evidence. The Miller family has a lot of power in this city, Rebecca. Bianca's father is one of the largest local employers and contributes generously to political campaigns." Rebecca nodded, understanding the implications. She took the folder with Bianca's drawings from her bag and spread them on the table. "Look what she's been producing in art classes in recent weeks." The drawings told a disturbing story. In several of them, a small figure, clearly representing Bianca, appeared isolated, often in dark or confined spaces. In one particularly unsettling drawing, the child figure was curled up in a small square that looked like a closet, while a threatening adult silhouette loomed outside. In the corner of the page, in the irregular handwriting of a 7-year-old, was written, "I'm scared of the dark." "My God," Cecilia murmured, putting her hand over her mouth. "This suggests confinement as a form of punishment." "Exactly what I thought," Rebecca agreed. And today I confirmed my suspicions about the physical neglect. The girl was sweeping the sidewalk barefoot, trembling from the cold, afraid of not getting food if she didn't finish the task. The principal stood up, determined. I'm calling CPS right now. In the meantime, start gathering all records about Bianca. Grades, attendance, behavior, drawings, anything that can document the change. We need to build a solid case. In the hallway, the bell rang, announcing the start of classes. Rebecca checked her watch. Her first class would be with Bianca's group. I'm going to the classroom now. I want to observe how she is today, after what I witnessed. Upon entering the second-grade classroom, Rebecca immediately looked for Bianca. The girl was in her usual place at the back of the room, wearing an impeccably clean and ironed uniform, a cared-for appearance that Rebecca now recognized as part of the facade of perfection that Christine maintained. Bianca's brown hair was tied in an immaculate ponytail, but her eyes remained sad and distant. During the English lesson, while the other children eagerly participated in shared reading, Bianca remained quiet, her eyes often turned towards the window. When Rebecca approached her desk to offer individual help, she noticed how the girl instinctively flinched, as if expecting a reprimand. "It's okay, Bianca," she said softly. "Can you show me how far you've read?" With trembling hands, the girl pointed to a line in the middle of the page. Rebecca then noticed something she hadn't before. Small reddish marks on the child's wrists, as if something tight had recently been tied there. Controlling her reaction so as not to alarm the girl, Rebecca smiled gently. "You're doing very well. Do you want to try reading the next paragraph for me after class?" Bianca nodded almost imperceptibly. At the end of class, when the other students went out for recess, she remained seated as if waiting for instructions on what to do. "Bianca, did you hurt yourself?" Rebecca asked carefully, indicating the girl's wrists. The child quickly pulled down her uniform sleeves. "It was nothing, Ms. Rebecca. I fell while playing." "Are you sure?" "You can tell me anything, you know that, don't you?" Bianca's eyes filled with tears, but she held them back as if she was practiced at not showing emotions. "Ms. Rebecca, you went to my house today." "Yes, sweetie. I was worried to see you working in the cold like that." The girl quickly looked at the door, making sure they were alone. "She was very angry after you left. She said that if I tell anyone at school anything, she'll send me to a boarding school far away from my dad." Rebecca's stomach churned with the revelation. It was a classic threat from manipulators. Isolate the victim from potential allies. "Bianca, no one is going to send you away, I promise. We are here to help you." She hesitated, then decided to be direct yet gentle. "Those marks on your wrists, did someone hurt you?" The girl took a deep breath, visibly fighting against fear. "When I don't do things right, sometimes I get sent to the closet for time out. It's dark in there and—" Her voice trailed off. "Last night I spilled some juice on the living room rug. She tied my hands so I wouldn't touch anything while I cleaned it all up. She said I'm too clumsy." Rebecca felt a wave of anger and indignation, but kept her expression calm for Bianca's sake. "That's not right, sweetie. No one should tie you up or lock you in dark places, never. But she said it's for my own good, so I can learn to be a better girl." The confusion on Bianca's face was painful to witness, the result of months of psychological manipulation. "Listen, Bianca. You are a wonderful girl exactly as you are. Accidents happen to everyone, even adults. It's not fair for you to be punished like that." At that moment, the classroom door opened and Ms. Martha, the school psychologist, entered. Rebecca had requested her presence during the conversation with the principal. "Hi, Bianca. Remember me? I'm Ms. Martha, the school psychologist. Ms. Davies told me you're a very talented artist. Would you like to draw with me today?" While Ms. Martha led Bianca to her office for a careful psychological evaluation, Rebecca returned to the principal's office, where Cecilia was finishing a phone call. "Child Protective Services will send someone tomorrow for an initial assessment," the principal informed. "They suggested we not alert the family yet. They want to build a case with sufficient evidence first." "I just spoke with Bianca," Rebecca said, her voice trembling with indignation. "She confirmed she's locked in a closet as punishment and showed marks on her wrists. Christine tied her up last night for spilling juice on the rug." "My God," Cecilia whispered, horrified. "This goes beyond neglect. It's psychological and physical abuse. We need to act quickly," Rebecca insisted. Bianca said Christine threatened her with boarding school if she tells anything to the school. Typical, Cecilia responded bitterly. Isolating the victim from potential allies. The principal picked up the phone again. I'll inform CPS about this new information. Maybe we can speed up the process. When Rebecca left the principal's office, her cell phone vibrated with a notification. It was a message from an unknown number. Ms. Davies, this is Teresa, a former employee of the Miller household. I heard you were there today. We need to talk about Bianca. It's urgent. I have important information. Rebecca felt a shiver of hope. An unexpected ally had just emerged, and with her perhaps the evidence they needed to save Bianca from Christine's clutches. What would the former employee know? What horrors had she witnessed in that seemingly perfect mansion? The battle for Bianca's protection had just gained a new and promising chapter. The Golden Pine Cafe was located in the historic center of Aspen, far enough from the school and the upscale area where the Millers lived to be a safe meeting place. Rebecca arrived 15 minutes before the agreed time, choosing a discreet table at the back of the establishment, from where she could observe the entrance without being easily noticed. The aroma of freshly ground coffee and hot chocolate filled the cozy atmosphere decorated with alpine motifs, characteristic of the tourist town. Rebecca ordered a cappuccino, more to justify her presence than for a desire to drink something. Her mind was entirely focused on the message received and what she might discover about Bianca's situation. At exactly 5:30 p.m., a woman of approximately 50 years old entered the cafe. Graying hair pulled back in a simple bun, modest but impeccably clean clothes, and a posture that betrayed years of domestic work. Her dark, attentive eyes scanned the room until they found Rebecca, who gave a discreet nod. "Ms. Davies? I'm Teresa Evans, former housekeeper for the Miller family," the woman introduced herself, sitting down with an expression of evident concern. "Thank you for coming. What do you know about Bianca?" Rebecca asked directly, after Teresa ordered a plain coffee. The former employee looked around, making sure they wouldn't be overheard, and lowered her voice. "I worked for the Millers for almost 2 years. I was there when Mr. Edward married Christine. In the beginning, she was all smiles and attention with Bianca, but everything changed when the girl's father started traveling more frequently." Teresa took a sip of her coffee and continued. "Christine has 2 faces, teacher. One for the outside world, the dedicated socialite, the loving stepmother, the charity event organizer, and another that only those who live inside that house know." "What kind of things did you witness?" Rebecca inquired, mentally preparing for what was to come. "Disproportionate punishments for minimal mistakes. At first they were small things, depriving Bianca of dessert, making her sit on a stool for hours, that sort of thing. But it gradually got worse." Teresa wiped away a tear that stubbornly fell. "The guest room closet became the favorite place for punishment. A small space, no windows, completely dark. I found Bianca in there several times, curled up and trembling with fear." Rebecca felt her heart clench. "Bianca mentioned that closet today. It doesn't surprise me. The girl spends hours in there, sometimes without food, other times after being forced to kneel on corn kernels or beans." Teresa opened her purse and discreetly pulled out an envelope. "I was fired 3 weeks ago because Christine caught me trying to pass food to Bianca during one of those punishments. But before I left, I documented some things." Inside the envelope were photos taken with a cell phone. The first showed Bianca sleeping on the floor next to a luxurious bed, with only a thin towel serving as a blanket. Other images revealed the child kneeling on grains, cleaning the marble floor with a small brush, or doing household chores clearly inappropriate for her age. Christine said she was teaching discipline. But the truth is, she resents Bianca's existence. The girl is a constant reminder that she wasn't Edward's first love, that he had a life before her. Teresa lowered her voice even further. "And there's more. I believe she's embezzling money from the charities she claims to support. Several times I heard her on suspicious calls, talking about transfers and altered documents." Rebecca carefully put the photos away. "Teresa, would you be willing to testify officially about this? Child Protective Services is being contacted, but your testimony would be crucial." The former housekeeper hesitated. "I'm scared, teacher. Christine has powerful friends in the city, and I need to work. Who would hire me after testifying against the Millers? But," she took a deep breath, determined, I will do whatever it takes for Bianca. That child doesn't deserve what she's going through." As they spoke, the cafe door opened again, and a man of approximately 35 years old entered. Tall, with a well-trimmed beard and observant eyes behind thick-rimmed glasses, he carried a discreet backpack. Teresa immediately tensed. "It's Victor Stone, a reporter for the Mountain Gazette. He investigates corruption cases." "He's Christine's friend," she whispered, turning her face so as not to be recognized. The reporter ordered a coffee at the counter and, to their surprise, walked directly to their table. "Ms. Rebecca Davies? Forgive the intrusion. I'm Victor Stone, investigative journalist." He looked at Teresa and added, "And I know you well too, Miss Evans. Don't worry, I'm not Christine's friend. In fact, I've been investigating her for some time." "How did you know we'd be here?" Rebecca asked, suspicious. Victor smiled discreetly. A good journalist never reveals his sources. "But let's just say I have contacts at the school who mentioned your concern for little Bianca, and other contacts informed me about Miss Evans's unfair dismissal." Teresa still looked apprehensive. "What do you want from us?" "Perhaps we can help each other," Victor proposed, sitting down after receiving silent permission from Rebecca. "I'm investigating fund diversions in the charities managed by Christine Miller. So far, I've found indications that at least 30% of donations disappear mysteriously." "That would explain the frequent charity events," Teresa murmured. "She always insists on personally controlling all the accounting." "Exactly," Victor agreed. "But while investigating the finances, I started hearing rumors about how she treats her stepdaughter. Initially, I didn't give much credence. Christine maintains an impeccable public image. However, the whispers became too frequent to ignore." Rebecca studied him carefully. "Why should we trust you?" Victor took a tablet from his backpack and showed the two women a detailed dossier on Christine. There were records of suspicious financial transactions, anonymous testimonies from former employees of her institutions, and even a timeline of her social ascent. Before marrying Edward Miller, Christine had already been married to another elderly businessman who died under circumstances, let's say, convenient. I'm not suggesting anything illicit, but the pattern is interesting. He slid his finger across the screen, showing more documents. "I also discovered that she falsified part of her academic history. She never studied in Paris, as she claims, nor did she work for the large charities she mentions on her resume." Teresa nodded slowly. "That doesn't surprise me. She always avoided speaking French when foreign visitors appeared, despite claiming fluency." "What exactly are you proposing, Mr. Stone?" Rebecca questioned, beginning to see a possibility of alliance. "A cooperation. You have evidence of abuse against Bianca that I couldn't obtain. I have resources, contacts, and a media outlet to expose Christine if necessary. Plus, I know an excellent lawyer specializing in children's rights who could guide you through the legal process." Victor paused, his gaze sincere. "It's not just a story for me. I grew up in an abusive home, and I know what that girl is going through." Rebecca and Teresa exchanged glances, silently evaluating the proposal. Finally, Rebecca made her decision. "We'll work together, but with one condition. Bianca's well-being comes first, before any report. Nothing that could expose her or traumatize her further." "Absolutely," Victor agreed immediately. "In fact, I suggest we keep her identity completely protected in any published material. We can focus on the financial fraud first, using that as leverage for the authorities to investigate more deeply." The three spent the next hour elaborating a plan of action. Victor shared the contact of Dr. Helen Carter, the lawyer specializing in children's rights. Rebecca explained about CPS involvement and the psychological evaluation Bianca was undergoing at school. Teresa promised to gather more evidence and contact other former employees who could testify. As they finalized the meeting, Rebecca's cell phone rang. It was Cecilia, the principal. "Rebecca, we have a problem," the tense voice said on the other end of the line. "Christine Miller just called to inform that Bianca will no longer attend our school. According to her, the girl will be transferred to a private school that better meets her needs." When I questioned, she mentioned homeschooling temporarily. "My God," Rebecca murmured, panic growing. "She's trying to isolate Bianca completely." "Exactly. And there's more. She made insinuations about your inappropriate visit to their residence this morning, threatening to file a formal complaint with the State Department of Education for invasion of privacy and harassment. Rebecca shared the news with Teresa and Victor, who immediately understood the gravity of the situation. She realized we're making moves, Victor concluded. We need to act faster. If Bianca is removed from school, we'll lose our main point of contact and observation. What if she really sends the girl away? Teresa worried, her hands trembling slightly. I know Christine. She's capable of that and much more to maintain her control. We no longer have time for careful planning, Rebecca decided, putting away the photos and notes. I'm calling Child Protective Services right now to inform them about this new attempt at isolation. Victor, can you contact your lawyer? We need an emergency protection order. As they left the cafe, snow began to fall softly over Aspen, covering the city with a white blanket that hid the darker shadows. For Bianca, that night could be the longest and loneliest of all, but now she had something she hadn't had before. A group of adults determined to fight for her, whatever the cost. The next morning dawned with Aspen covered by a thin layer of snow, a rare phenomenon even for the city's harsh winter. Rebecca had barely slept, alternating between calls with Child Protective Services, exchanging messages with Victor, and conversing with Dr. Helen Carter, the lawyer recommended by the journalist. At 7:30 a.m., an emergency meeting was called at the school. Present were Rebecca, Principal Cecilia, Ms. Martha, the school psychologist, and 2 CPS counselors, Paul Reynolds and Sandra Green. Dr. Helen participated via video call, her serious expression reflecting the gravity of the situation. The attempt to remove Bianca from school is a clear warning sign, the lawyer stated, adjusting her purple-framed glasses. We have enough evidence to request a protection order, but we need to act with extreme caution. The Miller family has significant political connections. How long would it take to get that order? Cecilia asked, concerned. Normally a few days, but given the circumstances, I'm preparing an urgent request that could be considered today, if we can get the right judge's attention. Helen paused. However, we need an up-to-date medical report documenting any physical signs of mistreatment. Sandra, the CPS counselor, interjected, That's complicated. We can't just take the child to a doctor without authorization from the legal guardian. Actually, we can, corrected Paul, her CPS colleague. In cases of well-founded suspicion of abuse, the Child Protection Act authorizes us to take emergency protective measures, including medical evaluation. Exactly, Helen agreed. I will include a request for compulsory medical evaluation in the petition. If the judge grants it, we will have legal authorization for it. Ms. Martha, who had been quiet until then, cleared her throat slightly. I have something important to share. She opened a folder with drawings and notes from her session with Bianca the previous day. During our conversation, Bianca showed all the classic signs of a child victim of systematic psychological abuse. Projective tests reveal constant fear, compromised self-esteem, and feelings of helplessness. The psychologist showed a particularly disturbing drawing, a small figure inside a dark box with monsters all around. When I asked about this drawing, Bianca explained that the monsters only appear when she's in the punishment room, her description for the closet where she's locked. This is psychological torture, Rebecca murmured. Feeling physically ill. I completely agree, Helen affirmed from the computer screen. I will add this psychological report to the protection request. In the meantime, I suggest you make an institutional visit to the residence today. The presence of Child Protective Services will make it difficult for any attempt to remove Bianca before we get the court order. The plan was quickly established. Paul and Sandra, as representatives of Child Protective Services, would make an official visit to the Miller mansion at 2 p.m., accompanied by Rebecca as the school's representative. The presence of the educational coordinator, who already knew Bianca and had her trust, would be crucial for the girl to feel safe enough to speak. Meanwhile, Helen would submit the emergency protection request to the juvenile court, and Victor would discreetly mobilize his contacts to ensure that no political influence interfered with the process. At 1:45 p.m., the official Child Protective Services car parked near the school where Rebecca was waiting. The journey to the Miller mansion was made in tense silence, each immersed in their own thoughts and concerns. Ready? Paul asked when they stopped in front of the imposing wrought-iron gate of the residence. Rebecca took a deep breath. As much as possible. The intercom was answered by an unknown female voice, probably the new employee hired to replace Teresa. Paul formally identified himself as a CPS counselor, requesting entry for an institutional visit. After a few moments of waiting, the electronic gate slowly opened. Christine Miller awaited them at the main entrance of the house, impeccably dressed in a light blue cashmere set, her socialite smile firmly in place, but her eyes revealed barely contained irritation. "Good afternoon. I confess I'm surprised by this official visit." Her gaze lingered on Rebecca with clear displeasure, especially considering the presence of the coordinator, who already demonstrated inappropriate behavior by coming here uninvited yesterday. Paul maintained a professional tone. "Mrs. Miller, we are here on an institutional visit to verify the well-being conditions of the minor Bianca Miller. As per Child Protective Services protocol." "I understand." Christine's smile became even stiffer. "Unfortunately, Bianca is not home at the moment. She is at an appointment with her private doctor." Sandra, the counselor, frowned. "Curious. The school was not notified about any scheduled medical appointment." "I wasn't aware I needed to inform the school about family medical decisions," Christine retorted acidly. "Especially considering Bianca will no longer be attending that institution. You cannot simply remove a child from school without formal transfer to another registered educational institution," Rebecca interjected, remaining calm despite the provocation. "Actually, I can. I've already initiated the authorization process for homeschooling, as is my right. But I'm not here to debate this with a mere educational coordinator." Christine turned to the counselors. "If you wish to verify Bianca's situation, I suggest you schedule another time when she is present." Paul stepped forward, his posture firm. "Mrs. Miller, we have a legal duty to verify Bianca's living conditions and well-being. Even if she is not present, we must conduct our institutional visit." For a moment, Christine's smile faltered. Her eyes flashed with something dangerous, but she quickly regained her composure. "Certainly. Please come in." Although I consider this an unnecessary invasion of privacy, the mansion was as impressive inside as its facade suggested. Italian marble floors, original artworks, designer furniture, everything exuded wealth and good taste. Christine led them on a clearly rehearsed tour, showing impeccably tidy spaces and talking non-stop about the benefits she provided for her stepdaughter. "This is Bianca's room," she announced, opening a door to a room that looked like it came straight out of a decorating magazine. Soft pink and white tones, a canopy bed, shelves filled with children's books and expensive toys, all perfectly arranged. As you can see, she has everything a child could wish for. Sandra walked around the room, observing carefully. She touched the books, noting that some seemed never to have been opened. The toys were arranged almost artificially, without the typical chaos of a space truly inhabited by a 7-year-old child. "It's a very beautiful room," the counselor commented. "It looks like an exhibition room." The comment was met with a cold smile from Christine. Paul, meanwhile, took notes on his clipboard, discreetly photographing the environment with his cell phone. "And where does Bianca usually play?" Rebecca asked, noticing the absence of any signs of real child activity. "She has a playroom downstairs," Christine replied quickly, "and she spends quite a bit of time in the garden when the weather permits." Paul checked his watch. "Mrs. Miller, we'd like to see all the rooms in the house if you don't mind." "All of them?" Christine couldn't completely hide her apprehension. "Some areas are private, like my personal office, and—" "It's standard procedure," Sandra interrupted firmly. "We need to check all spaces where the child might move about." Reluctantly, Christine continued the tour of the mansion. When they reached the hallway leading to the guest bedrooms, she tried to quicken her pace, but Paul deliberately slowed down. "And this room?" he asked, indicating a closed door. "Just a guest room we rarely use," Christine replied with a forced casual shrug. "May we see?" After a moment of almost imperceptible hesitation, Christine opened the door, revealing an elegant room in shades of green and gold. "As you can see, nothing special." Rebecca immediately noticed the closet door, exactly as Bianca had described. It was ajar, and even from that distance, one could see it was a small windowless space. "And that closet?" she asked deliberately. Christine's smile now seemed frozen on her face. Just extra storage. Nothing relevant to your visit. Paul walked to the closet and opened the door completely. The space was even smaller than it appeared, approximately 6 by 6 feet, without adequate ventilation and completely dark when the door was closed. On the floor there was a small cushion and, almost hidden beneath it, a worn teddy bear that Rebecca immediately recognized as belonging to Bianca. The girl had brought it to school until a few months ago. Interesting to find a child's toy in a closet that's supposedly just for storage, Sandra commented, picking up the teddy bear. Christine's mask of cordiality finally began to crack. That must have been left by a visitor. We have nieces and nephews who sometimes stay here. At that moment, the sound of the main door opening was heard, followed by voices. A woman, probably the same one who had answered the intercom, spoke in a low tone. And then, clear as crystal, Bianca's voice. "Can I go to my room now?" Christine's eyes widened for a second before she regained her composure. "It seems the medical appointment ended earlier than expected." Paul and Sandra exchanged significant glances. "How convenient," the counselor murmured as they walked back to the main hall. Bianca was there, still in her winter coat, looking tired and downcast. Upon seeing Rebecca, her eyes lit up briefly, but a quick glance from her stepmother was enough to make her lower her head again. "Bianca, darling," Christine called with exaggerated sweetness. "These gentlemen are from Child Protective Services and have come to check how well you're being cared for. Why don't you tell them about your doctor? Dr. Wells was very kind today, wasn't she?" The girl looked confused. "Doctor?" A tense silence filled the hall. Christine quickly intervened. "She's tired, poor thing. It's been a long day." Rebecca approached and knelt to Bianca's height. "Hi, sweetie. We missed you at school today." "I missed everyone too," the girl replied in a low voice. Christine said, "I'm going to study at home now." "Is that true, Miss Rebecca?" Before the coordinator could answer, Christine placed her hands on Bianca's shoulders with excessive firmness. "Darling, why don't you go to your room to change while I talk to our visitors? Afterwards, we can have hot chocolate." Paul stepped forward. "Actually, we'd like to talk with Bianca for a bit, if you don't mind." "As her legal guardian, I do mind," Christine replied, her amiable tone finally abandoned. "Bianca has had tiring appointments today and needs to rest. Any questions can be directed to me." At that instant, Sandra's phone vibrated. She checked the message and gave a discreet signal to Paul, who nodded almost imperceptibly. "Mrs. Miller," the counselor said, taking an official document from his folder, "I have here a court order for Bianca Miller to undergo an independent medical evaluation at Aspen Community Hospital, accompanied by Child Protective Services representatives and without your presence." The color drained from Christine's face. "This is absurd." "On what grounds?" "Based on reports of potential mistreatment and collected evidence that warrants further investigation," Paul calmly replied, handing a copy of the order to the astonished stepmother. "Bianca will come with us now for this evaluation. You may appear at the hospital later, accompanied by legal counsel if you wish." "This is an outrage." Christine's voice rose dangerously. "You can't just take my stepdaughter. I'll call my lawyer immediately. And the mayor. You have no idea who you're dealing with." Rebecca approached Bianca, who watched the scene with frightened eyes. "It's okay, sweetie. We're just going for a little ride, okay?" The girl looked at her stepmother, fear evident in her eyes. Christine, realizing she was losing control of the situation, abruptly changed tactics. "Bianca, darling, you don't want to go with these people, do you? You want to stay here with Mommy, don't you?" Her tone was sweet again, but with an underlying note of threat that the child clearly recognized. Paul firmly intervened. "Mrs. Miller, I must remind you that interfering with a court order is a crime. Please do not make this situation more difficult for Bianca." Realizing she had no legal choice at that moment, Christine physically recoiled, but her eyes promised retaliation. "This will not stand. Edward returns from his trip tomorrow and he will hear about this absurdity." "Great," Sandra replied. "We really would like to speak with Bianca's father as well." As Sandra gently led Bianca to the official car, Paul completed the formal procedures, and Rebecca observed the mansion that, despite all its opulence, had become a prison for an innocent child. In Christine's furious gaze, one could see the desperation of someone who, for the first time, was losing absolute control of the situation she had so carefully cultivated. Outside, snow had begun to fall again over Aspen, covering the footprints left at the mansion's entrance. As the car drove away, Rebecca noticed Bianca looking out the rear window, not with sadness at leaving the luxurious house, but with the silent relief of someone who finally was beginning to breathe the air of freedom. Aspen Community Hospital was relatively quiet that afternoon. Dr. Marina Wells, a respected pediatrician specializing in child abuse cases, awaited Bianca's arrival in the examination room, reserved especially for that evaluation. When the girl entered, accompanied by Rebecca and Sandra, the doctor immediately noticed the signs of tension and fear on her small face. "Hello, Bianca." "I'm Dr. Marina," she introduced herself with a gentle smile, kneeling to the child's height. "Do you know why you're here today?" The girl looked at Rebecca, seeking reassurance before responding in a low voice. "To see if I'm sick. More or less. I'm going to do a complete checkup to see how your health is. Is that okay with you?" When Bianca nodded shyly, the doctor continued, "Would you like Ms. Rebecca to stay here with you during the exam?" "Yes, please," the girl replied, instinctively clutching the coordinator's hand. The examination was conducted with extreme care and sensitivity. Dr. Marina constantly talked with Bianca, explaining each procedure before performing it and asking for permission to touch her. Sandra, the CPS counselor, remained in a corner of the room observing and taking discreet notes. The results were revealing. Bianca showed signs of mild malnutrition, with weight below ideal for her age. There were marks on her wrists and ankles, consistent with recent physical restraints. A yellowish bruise on her lower back was in an advanced stage of healing. But what most concerned the doctor was the child's emotional reaction during specific parts of the exam, the evident fear when she had to take off her coat, the trembling in her hands when asked how she had gotten certain injuries, her constantly downcast gaze. After concluding the physical evaluation, Dr. Marina asked Sandra to step out briefly so she could speak alone with Bianca and Rebecca. Gently, she showed the girl a set of anatomical dolls, tools commonly used in child abuse evaluations. "Bianca, can you show me where Christine touches you when she's angry?" The question, asked with careful neutrality, provoked an immediate reaction. Bianca picked up one of the dolls and pointed to its arms, shoulders, and upper back. "She squeezes hard here when she's angry," the girl explained, indicating the doll's arms. "And sometimes she pushes me from behind when I don't walk fast." "And has anyone ever touched you in a way that made you uncomfortable? In parts of your body that are usually covered by your swimsuit?" Bianca frowned, confused, and then shook her head negatively. "No. Christine doesn't even like to bathe me or change my clothes. She says I'm too big for that now." The answer brought evident relief to Rebecca and the doctor. At least that type of abuse did not seem to be part of Bianca's suffering. After a few more carefully formulated questions, Dr. Marina concluded the interview. She asked Sandra to return to the room and informed them that she would need about an hour to finalize her complete report. Meanwhile, Bianca could wait in the pediatric resting room, where there were books, toys, and a small television. When the girl left with Sandra to see the space, Dr. Marina turned to Rebecca with a grave expression. "The picture is clear. Systematic psychological abuse, emotional and physical neglect, and mistreatment consistent with inappropriate physical punishments. There are no signs of sexual abuse, fortunately, but the emotional damage is significant and concerning." The doctor organized her notes. "My report will recommend the immediate removal of the child from the stepmother's care and intensive psychological counseling." "What about the father?" Rebecca asked. "I will need to evaluate him too, but from what Bianca reported, he seems to be more negligent than abusive, too absent to notice or intervene in what was happening." The doctor sighed. "It's common in cases like this. One parent is the active abuser, while the other becomes a passive accomplice by omission." In the resting room, Bianca had found a children's book and was quietly leafing through it. Rebecca sat beside her, noting how the girl seemed simultaneously exhausted and relieved. "Ms. Rebecca," Bianca whispered after a few minutes, "do I have to go home today?" The simple question carried so much fear that Rebecca felt a lump in her throat. "No, sweetie. You're going to spend a little time in a special place where other children also stay when they need extra care." "Like a hospital?" "Not exactly. It's a children's home with other kids and very nice adults who will take care of you. Rebecca hesitated, then decided to be honest, within the limits of what Bianca could understand. The adults are worried about some things that happened to you at Christine's house, and they need to check everything carefully before deciding the best place for you to stay. Bianca's eyes filled with restrained tears. Will my dad be mad at me? No, sweetie. None of this is your fault. Absolutely nothing. Meanwhile, in downtown Aspen, Edward Miller disembarked early from his private flight. After receiving an alarming call from Christine, he had decided to return immediately from his business trip in New York City. At the municipal airport, he was met by Victor Stone, who had used his contacts to discover the businessman's early arrival. Mr. Miller, Victor Stone, investigative journalist for the Mountain Gazette. We need to talk about your daughter. Edward, a man of approximately 40 years old with a serious expression and deep dark circles under his eyes, looked at the reporter with suspicion. I have nothing to declare. And if you're planning to turn a family matter into a spectacle to sell newspapers, my lawyers will be in touch. It's not about that, Victor replied calmly, handing an envelope to the businessman. This is for you. It's evidence of what your daughter has been suffering while you travel. Reluctant but intrigued, Edward opened the envelope right there. As he looked at the photos of Bianca, sleeping on the floor, kneeling on grains with marks on her wrists locked in the closet, his face lost its color. Where did you get this? He asked in a strangled voice. Teresa, the former housekeeper, documented everything before she was fired for trying to protect Bianca. There are also teacher reports, drawings made by your daughter, and now probably a medical report confirming the mistreatment. Victor paused, observing the man's reaction. And there's something else you should know. I'm investigating possible fund diversions in the charities managed by your wife. Edward ran a hand through his hair, visibly shaken. This can't be true. Christine always seemed to take such good care of Bianca. When you were around, Victor completed. Mr. Miller, how many days a month do you travel on average? 15, 20? The businessman did not answer, but his silence was eloquent. Finally, he lifted his eyes from the photographs, a new determination in his gaze. Where is my daughter now? While Edward and Victor headed to Aspen Community Hospital, Christine was not idle. After a series of calls to influential people in the city, from the mayor to the regional director of education, she had managed to set in motion a strategy to reverse the situation. Her main card was a formal complaint against Rebecca for unethical conduct and harassment, demanding her immediate removal from the school. At the hospital, Dr. Marina's final report was delivered to the competent authorities. Based on the medical evidence and Bianca's testimony, the duty judge of the juvenile court ordered the girl's temporary institutional placement until a special hearing could be held to decide on her custody. When Edward arrived at the hospital, accompanied by Victor, he found a situation already in progress. Bianca was being prepared to be transferred to Hope Haven Children's Home, a respected institution that served children in vulnerable situations. "Daddy!" Bianca exclaimed upon seeing Edward, running to hug him with a mixture of relief and apprehension. The businessman knelt, hugging his daughter tightly. Silent tears streamed down his face as he examined the bruises on Bianca's wrists and noticed her fragile and downcast appearance. "My love, I'm sorry." "I'm so sorry." Paul, the CPS counselor, approached. "Mr. Miller, I'm Paul Reynolds from Child Protective Services. We need to talk about Bianca's situation." While Rebecca stayed with the girl, Edward was taken to a private room with Paul, Sandra, and Dr. Helen, who had arrived at the hospital to personally follow the case. There, all the evidence collected so far was presented, including the newly completed medical report. Edward listened to everything in stunned silence, occasionally asking questions or seeking clarification. The guilt on his face was palpable, the painful realization that his constant absence had left his daughter vulnerable to systematic abuse. "I never imagined," he murmured, his voice choked. "Christine always seemed so dedicated, so concerned about Bianca. When I remarried, I thought I was giving my daughter a new mother, someone who could be present in moments when I couldn't due to work. It's a common pattern in cases like this," Dr. Helen explained gently. "Abusers frequently maintain an exemplary facade for the outside world, and for figures of authority, reserving their harmful behaviors for when they are alone with their victims. "What happens now?" Edward asked, wiping his eyes. "By court order, Bianca will temporarily stay at the children's home," Paul replied. "You may visit her daily under initial supervision. Meanwhile, a more in-depth investigation will be conducted, and your wife will be summoned to provide clarification." "I want to request exclusive custody of my daughter," Edward declared with renewed firmness. "And I will file for divorce immediately." "That will be considered at the hearing," Helen responded. "But I must warn you, the court will likely question your prolonged absence and lack of adequate supervision. You will need to demonstrate that you are willing to make significant changes in your life to prioritize Bianca's well-being." Edward nodded, determined. "I will do whatever is necessary. My daughter has always been my priority, but I made the terrible mistake of believing I was securing her future by building a business empire, when in reality I was neglecting her present and allowing her to suffer." At that very moment, at the municipal school, Principal Cecilia received an official communication from the State Department of Education ordering Rebecca's immediate removal from her duties until investigations into allegations of improper conduct are concluded. Christine had achieved her first victory in the unfolding war. With the influence of money and political connections, she began to retaliate against those who dared to challenge her control. What she didn't know yet was that Edward had finally opened his eyes, and that the evidence against her was far more substantial than she imagined. As night fell over Aspen, bringing with it an even more intense cold, Bianca settled into her temporary bed at Hope Haven Children's Home. The place was simple, but welcoming. Colorful walls, attentive educators, other children who greeted her with curious smiles. For the first time in many months, the girl fell asleep without fear of being woken for some arbitrary punishment, without the constant anxiety of making some mistake that would unleash Christine's controlled fury. The next morning, an explosive news story dominated local newspapers and quickly reached state media. Financial scandal, embezzlement in Aspen charities, exceeds $500,000. Although Christine's name did not directly appear in the headlines, the photos illustrating the articles left no doubt about who was under investigation. Victor Stone had launched the first domino that, once in motion, would be impossible to stop. The carefully constructed facade by Christine over the years was spectacularly collapsing, and the world she had manipulated for so long was about to turn against her. 3 weeks had passed since Bianca's removal from the Miller mansion. During this period, Aspen experienced a storm of revelations, accusations, and changes that shook the social structures of the small tourist town. Hope Haven Children's Home had become a safe refuge for Bianca. Under the care of child psychologist Dr. Laura Perry and the team of educators, the girl slowly began to blossom. Her drawings, once dominated by dark figures and confined spaces, now featured vibrant colors and outdoor scenes. In therapy sessions, she gradually processed her traumatic experiences, learning that none of what she had suffered was her fault. Edward visited his daughter daily, strictly adhering to the schedules established by Child Protective Services. In the first visits, Bianca was reserved and insecure, unconsciously testing whether her father would truly remain present this time. Edward, in turn, was going through his own journey of self-assessment and transformation. "You seem different today," Dr. Laura observed after one of the supervised visits. Edward smiled slightly, adjusting the collar of the simple shirt he wore, a contrast to the immaculate suits that used to be his trademark. "I've made some important decisions. I've delegated the daily administration of the companies to my partners and transformed our New York City office into a remote operations center. I bought a house here in Aspen near Bianca's school. If the court allows her to live with me again, of course." "Significant changes," the psychologist commented, genuinely impressed. "I realized I was building an empire to leave as an inheritance to my daughter, without realizing that what she really needed was me present, here and now." His eyes welled up briefly. "The money and status I so stubbornly pursued almost cost the well-being of the only person who truly matters to me." Meanwhile, Rebecca faced her own battle. Removed from school due to the accusations formalized by Christine, the educational coordinator spent her days gathering documents, testimonies, and evidence for her defense. The support from the school community was overwhelming. Parents, students, and colleagues organized a petition demanding her immediate return to duties. "It shouldn't be you who's suspended," Principal Cecilia commented during a visit to Rebecca's house. "It's revolting how power and money can still distort justice, even when there's clear evidence of who is right and who is wrong." "The important thing is that Bianca is safe now," Rebecca replied, serving tea to her friend and colleague. "My career can wait. Her childhood couldn't." What neither of them knew at that moment was that the accusations against Rebecca were about to completely crumble. The next morning, the main headline of the Mountain Gazette announced, "Financial scandal. Embezzlement in charities exceeds $2 million. The detailed report, signed by Victor Stone, presented documents, testimonies, and expert analyses that proved a sophisticated scheme of diverting funds from the charities managed by Christine. The story instantly resonated in state and national media. Within hours, the federal police announced the opening of a formal investigation, and the district attorney's office issued subpoenas for all involved in the scheme. The house of cards carefully built by Christine over the years was spectacularly collapsing. On the afternoon of that same day, the State Department of Education revoked Rebecca's suspension, recognizing that the accusations against her were unfounded and possibly motivated by ulterior motives. The coordinator was invited to return immediately to her duties, with the right to a public retraction. The hearing to decide Bianca's custody was scheduled for a sunny August Friday. The Aspen County Courthouse, a historic building in the city center, was unusually busy. Journalists, onlookers, and supporters crowded the corridors, all anxious for the outcome of the case that had captured the nation's attention. In the courtroom, Judge Eliza Blackwood, known for her firm stance and unwavering commitment to children's rights, presided over the session with a grave expression. On one side, Edward Miller, accompanied by Dr. Helen Carter. On the other, Christine, with a team of 3 highly paid lawyers. "This hearing aims to determine the custody of the minor Bianca Miller, currently under temporary state guardianship," the judge announced. "Considering the sensitivity of the case and the child's well-being, I rule that this will be a closed session, with presence allowed only for directly involved parties and summoned witnesses." The journalists were asked to leave and the courtroom doors were closed. For the next 4 hours, witnesses were heard, evidence presented, and arguments made. Teresa, the former housekeeper, gave an emotional testimony about the abuses she had witnessed. Rebecca presented the school reports and drawings that documented Bianca's behavioral change. Dr. Marina shared the details of the medical report that confirmed the physical and psychological signs of mistreatment. Christine, initially haughty and combative, gradually lost her composure as the evidence accumulated against her. When images of the closet where Bianca was locked as punishment were displayed, followed by photos of the marks on the girl's wrists, Christine finally exploded. "You don't understand. That girl needed discipline. Edward spoiled her with excessive pampering. I was just trying to teach responsibility and respect, values she clearly lacked." Her voice rose hysterically. "Everything I did was for her own good, to mold her character. Who are you to judge my methods?" The outburst was the last straw. Even her own lawyers seemed uncomfortable with their client's emotional breakdown, especially when she began making unfounded accusations against everyone present, claiming a conspiracy to destroy her reputation. After a brief interruption for Christine to calm down, the hearing continued with the final testimony, Edward himself. With a choked but firm voice, the businessman acknowledged his failures. "I was an absent father, Your Honor. I prioritized business, travel, and corporate expansion, mistakenly believing that ensuring material comfort was enough. Too much trust in my wife, too little attention to my daughter. These were my mistakes for which I will pay for the rest of my life." Edward took a deep breath before continuing. "I am not just asking for another chance as a father. I am presenting a concrete commitment to change, with actions already underway. I have completely redefined my professional and personal priorities. Bianca has always been the center of my heart. Now she will also be the center of my daily life." The judge listened carefully to every word, every testimony, every argument. After all the testimonies, she retired to deliberate, returning to the room an hour later with her decision. After careful consideration of all the evidence presented, it is crystal clear to this court that the minor Bianca Miller was subjected to improper conditions under the care of her stepmother, Miss Christine Miller. The medical reports, psychological reports, witness testimonies, and school documentation form an unequivocal picture of psychological, physical abuse and emotional neglect. The judge adjusted her glasses before proceeding. Regarding Mr. Edward Miller, this court recognizes his parental neglect due to prolonged absence and lack of adequate supervision, factors that indirectly contributed to the minor's suffering. However, his sincere acknowledgement of these failures and the concrete measures already implemented to correct them are also considered. Therefore, this court decides to grant temporary custody of Bianca Miller to her father, Edward Miller, conditioned on strict compliance with the following determinations: weekly psychological counseling for Bianca, family therapy for father and daughter, bi-monthly visits by a social worker to evaluate the home environment, and immediate enrollment of Bianca in an appropriate school institution with special educational support. Christine abruptly stood up, her face contorted with fury. "This is absurd. I will appeal. I have rights as a wife and stepmother." "Mrs. Miller," the judge interrupted firmly, "I must inform you that, in addition to losing any rights related to the minor Bianca, you are prohibited from having any contact with her for the next 2 years, after which the situation will be re-evaluated. Additionally, based on the evidence of abuse presented, this court is forwarding your case to the district attorney's office for possible criminal indictment for mistreatment and psychological abuse of a minor." Christine's face transformed into a mask of disbelief. "Criminal? This is ridiculous. I was a dedicated mother to that ungrateful child. And I must add," the judge continued unperturbed, "that this court is aware of the ongoing investigations into possible financial diversions in the charitable institutions under your administration. While this is not the focus of the present hearing, such information contributes to the overall picture of character and reliability that this court must consider." When the hearing was formally adjourned, Edward could not hold back tears of relief. Rebecca, who had witnessed the entire session, approached to congratulate him. "Thank you," he murmured, holding the coordinator's hands with genuine emotion. "Without your intervention, without your courage to question and investigate, Bianca could have spent years suffering in silence. I can never thank you enough." "Just be the father Bianca deserves," Rebecca responded softly. "That will be thanks enough." The next day, Bianca was officially transferred to her father's custody. The new house, located a few blocks from Maplewood Elementary School, was modest compared to the previous mansion, a cozy 2-story building with a small garden, where Edward had already installed a colorful swing. "It's our new house. Honey," he explained, opening the front door. "What do you think?" Bianca entered shyly, exploring each room with growing curiosity. Her bedroom had been decorated in soft shades of green, her favorite color, and a bookshelf filled with children's books. On the bedside table, a framed photo showed Bianca with her biological mother, who had passed away when she was only 2 years old. "You put Mom's picture," the girl observed, touching the frame with reverence. "She should always be part of your life, of our life," Edward replied, kneeling beside his daughter. "She loved you very much, Bianca. Just like I do. Will it just be the 2 of us living here now?" "Yes, Princess, just the 2 of us. And I promise I'll be present every day, in the mornings, in the evenings, on weekends, always." A week later, Bianca returned to Maplewood Elementary School. Her arrival was met with a small celebration organized by her classmates, colorful welcome posters, drawings, and even a homemade cake prepared by Mrs. Shirley, the school cook who had always had a special fondness for the girl. At the center of it all was Rebecca, reinstated to her position as educational coordinator with honors and a formal apology from the Department of Education. Seeing Bianca enter the classroom, hand in hand with her father, with a shy but genuine smile illuminating her little face, once so shadowed by fear, Rebecca felt that all the difficulties and risks had been worth it. Aspen's harsh winter was beginning to show signs of retreat. The first buds of spring timidly appeared in the city's gardens, promising renewal and growth. For Bianca, it was as if her life was following the same cycle of nature, leaving behind the cold and darkness, slowly moving towards light and warmth. In the weeks and months that followed, life found a new rhythm. Edward completely reorganized his priorities, reducing travel to the absolute minimum and creating a stable routine centered on Bianca's well-being. Therapy sessions helped father and daughter strengthen their bonds and process past traumas together. As for Christine, her fall was as spectacular as her social ascent had been. As investigations into the financial diversions progressed, her political connections quickly dissolved. No one wanted to be associated with the scandal dominating the news. The criminal case for mistreatment against Bianca proceeded in parallel, accumulating evidence and testimonies that made her conviction practically inevitable. On a sunny September afternoon, Rebecca received an unexpected visit in her office at school. Bianca entered shyly, carrying a colorful envelope. "Ms. Rebecca, I made this for you," the girl said, handing her the envelope with a shy smile. Inside was a handmade card, decorated with hearts, stars, and flowers of every imaginable color. In the center, a drawing showed two figures holding hands, one small and one large, walking under a radiant sun. The message, written in Bianca's irregular but careful handwriting, simply said, "Thank you for seeing me when I was invisible." Rebecca hugged the girl, her eyes welling up with emotion. In that small card was the essence of everything that had motivated her from the beginning, the certainty that every child deserves to be seen, heard, and protected, especially when more powerful voices try to silence them. At the end of that same day, as she organized her materials to leave, Rebecca received another visitor in her office, this time Victor Stone, the investigative journalist who had become a crucial ally in the fight for Bianca's protection. "I came to say goodbye," he announced, leaning against the door. "I've been invited to work for a larger newspaper in New York City. I'll be covering corruption and human rights cases nationwide. I'm happy for you, Victor. Your work on this case was fundamental." The journalist smiled. "You know what's funny? I started investigating financial diversions and ended up participating in a rescue much more valuable than any money." "Life has these ironies," Rebecca agreed, "and sometimes it puts us exactly where we need to be, at the moment someone needs us." After Victor left, Rebecca was alone in her office, contemplating the card made by Bianca. The late afternoon sun streamed through the window, illuminating the vibrant colors of the child's drawing. That small piece of paper represented not only a child's gratitude, but a powerful reminder of the impact a single act of courage can have. As she locked her office and walked through the silent school hallways, Rebecca reflected on how her decision to stop on that cold morning, to truly look at a child in suffering, had unleashed a series of events that transformed multiple lives. It hadn't been easy, nor safe, nor convenient, but it had been absolutely necessary. Outside, the first stars began to dot the aspen sky. In her new home, Bianca was probably having dinner with her father, talking about her day at school, making plans for the weekend, living the childhood she deserved. A child who once trembled in the cold now blossomed under the warmth of protection and genuine love. And in the end, perhaps that was the true lesson, that seeing the suffering of others and acting, even when it's difficult, even when there are risks, is what makes us truly human. That sometimes being the only voice willing to stand up against injustice can be the beginning of a powerful chorus, and that we should never ever underestimate the difference a single act of courage can make in a child's life. Dear listeners, we hope Bianca and Rebecca's story has touched your hearts and reminded us of the importance of being attentive to the signs of suffering around us, especially when it comes to children. To continue to be moved by narratives that explore the depth of human relationships and inspire us to be better, we have a special playlist with other equally captivating stories. Find it by clicking here to the side. If this story sparked something in you, don't forget to subscribe to the channel and leave your like. Every day we bring new narratives that make us reflect on life and its challenges. And have you ever witnessed a situation where a single person made all the difference? Tell us in the comments and share your own stories of courage and transformation.